Hey guys, college football 2019 is upon us. We've got one game tonight, which I don't really care about this game, so I'll watch it, I guess, because it's on. But it's Miami versus Florida. Some people are excited about this game. Look, I'm a product of the '80s, so I'm a product of Notre Dame playing Miami, and I really do not like Miami, never have. So I normally just kind of boycott this game. I boycott this game, and I boycott Florida State. Again, don't care about that game either. Again, it'll be on the background, but to me, week one really starts next week. We've got a full slate of games that are happening. I believe the Holy Wars next week, BYU Utah, which I love that game. Clemson's playing Georgia Tech. There's a lot of other good games to me that are happening. Although I tend to think that Clemson Georgia Tech game is going to get really out of hand really quick, but we'll see. Just really look forward to having 7 or 8 games on at once. I've got 10 minutes to do this, as is always the case, and I'm not going to touch on every single topic possible, but I'm going to touch on the things that are important to me that I think, I just kind of want to touch on leading into the year. As is always the case, I start with Notre Dame and go from there. So if you don't want to hear about Notre Dame, skip the next 3 minutes or so, and we'll get into maybe some topics that are relevant to you. So let's start with the Irish. What do I think they're going to do this year? I do not think they're going to be 12-0. I do think they'll probably be 10-2. To me, a bad season would be 9-3, 8-4. Maybe not a bad season. It would be disappointing for them to be 9-3. It would be highly disappointing to be 8-4. It would be great for them to be 10-2, go to a New Year's Six bowl game, and hopefully win that game. At some point, Notre Dame has to get over that hump and win the game. I'll tell you, the fact that Notre Dame lost to Clemson last year, 30-3, was annoying. I'll give you that as a Notre Dame fan. And Clemson had they dominated them, and Clemson should have won that game, obviously. Having said that, if Notre Dame were to have won one of these big games over the past 10, 15 years, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But it becomes piling on, and somewhat deservedly so. I mean, at some point, as a big time, if you want to continue to be a big time program, you got to win one of these games. Okay, look, as a fan, Notre Dame beating LSU in the Citrus Bowl was a big deal for me as a fan. It was an SEC team. Notre Dame had a good year, LSU had a good year, and they pulled out the win, and that was a good win for them. Having said that, you got to get over the hump at some point and win a big game. So Notre Dame's got some holes to fill. I think offensive line is a concern, linebacker is a concern, running back is a bit of a concern, wide receivers are very young. There's just a lot of holes, so we'll see what happens. But if everybody can stay modestly healthy, which we've already, Notre Dame's already had some issues with that in camp, with Cole Kmet, tight end, getting a broken collarbone, and Michael Young, a promising wide receiver, getting a broken collarbone as well. So it's going to be a little challenging, but hey, it's again at some point. You can't just beat a Michigan during the regular season. You've got to beat a great dominant team in a bowl game. So we'll see if Notre Dame can take that next step. But again, I do see them going at least 10-2. So one of the things I wanted to do as well was to talk about, there were a bunch of hires that were made, obviously, last year. And I wanted to talk through, who do I think is going to be concerned at the end of the year to say, hey, wow, why did we hire this guy again? Was he really the right hire? I'll tell you, to me, it's clear as day with some of these. And let me just talk through the ones that at least I think at the end of the year, the AD is going to be thinking, this was a poor choice. I think we need to move on from here, try to figure out a plan B. Number one is going to be Bowling Green with Scott Loeffler, just a terrible coordinator. I have absolutely no idea why anyone would think that he should be a head coach anywhere. So I don't think that was a good hire. Mike Loxley at Maryland, 2-26 as the head coach at New Mexico. I get it. A lot of people are going to say, well, it's New Mexico. He's going to do way better at Maryland. All right, so what's way better? 4 or 5 wins a year? I think that's exactly what's going to happen over probably a 3 to 4 year time span. I think they probably gave him enough money where they're going to need to keep him for 4 years, but they're not going to be happy. So I just don't see him winning any more than 4 to 6 games a year, and he will be fired. So just, again, all of these, look, I'll eat crow if I'm wrong on them. I just do not think I'm going to be wrong on any of these. Walt Bell at UMass, I understand why they hired him. A young coach, perhaps they see him as an up-and-coming coach. I just don't think he's necessarily ready to fill a head coaching position. In my opinion, I think they could have hired somebody who at the 1AA level from a New Hampshire or a Maine or one of those New England schools who would have been a way better hire, in my opinion. They would have known the area better. They would have been able to come in and do it. UConn is going to have to do that with Randy Edsall at some point because that's not working out either. And personally, I think that's what you got to do. You got to hire a guy who knows the area and wants to be there. So two retread coaches that were rehires, Gary Anderson and Mac Brown. I think Gary Anderson is a great coach, and I think Mac Brown's a great coach too. I think the challenge is that it's a rehire, it's a retread hire. These normally do not work out. Again, I just mentioned Randy Edsall at UConn. Did great his first stint at UConn. Now he's doing terrible, which is to be expected. Bobby Petrino at Louisville. They rehired him. You see what's happened there. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're just so far behind everybody else at this point. John Robinson from the 90s was rehired at Southern, maybe it was the 2000s, but he was rehired at Southern Cal. Didn't really do much there. It normally just does not work out when you rehire somebody at a program. So I personally just don't see that. I mean, I get it. UNC, I understand they needed stability. That's why they hired Mac Brown. And perhaps he's going to give that to them, and that's fine. I just don't know that they're going to be able to reach the heights that they once reached. And I think at some point, sooner rather than later, the AD is going to have to take a look at that and say, you know what, maybe we need to look elsewhere and see who we got. So top 5 surprises for this year, Virginia. Virginia, to me, the game at Notre Dame is going to be the turning point for Virginia. If Virginia is able to win that game, and I get it, people are going to laugh at me for saying this, I absolutely think they can win 10 or 11 games, okay? Because it's a confidence thing. College football is all about confidence, okay? If you win a big game like that, like if Notre Dame were to beat Georgia, they could potentially go undefeated. Potentially. Because, again, it's a confidence thing, okay? Do I think Notre Dame's going to beat Georgia? Probably not. But could they? Maybe. And if they did, again, it's a confidence thing. I'm saying the same thing about Virginia. Virginia wins that game, they could win maybe 10, even 11 games, okay? If they don't, they're going to win 8 or 9. Still a good team, still going to be difficult to beat them, all right? Baylor, I think, is in the same position. Matt Rule is their head coach. You guys have heard me talk about him in the past. Incredibly good head coach. I do see Baylor being probably better than some would think that he is. Or probably better than some would think that Baylor is going to be this year. I think most thought 8 wins or so. I see maybe even 9 or 10. It's the Big 12. I mean, anything can happen. So I just think he's that good of a coach. Speaking of the Big 12 and a great coach, Iowa State, Matt Campbell is going to keep them moving and trending in the right direction. Again, I think most have Iowa State winning 7 or 8 games. Again, it's entirely possible they could win 9. Everything goes through Oklahoma. Everything goes through Texas. I get it. But Iowa State's going to be a really tough out as well. So we'll see what happens there. Miami of Ohio, most have them winning 5 or 6 games. I personally think they're going to win at least 7. I think Chuck Martin is too good of a coach, and I think he's brought in a decent amount of talent. I think they're going to be able to figure it out, and I think this is the year. Again, keep in mind, the last 2 years they've won 6 games, so it's not like they're terrible, and I'm predicting them to win 7, for God's sake. But I think they're going to win 7. They're going to go to a bowl and potentially win 8. 8-5 is a really nice year for Miami and something to build on there. Southern Cal, again, all the stuff that I've read, 6 wins for Southern Cal. I just think Southern Cal has way too much talent. I think, if things are able to kind of come together for them, they could potentially win 8, especially in a really soft Pac-12. So I do see Southern Cal winning 8 games, and I think they're going to overachieve a bit. I don't know that that's necessarily enough for Hilton to keep his job, but if they won 8 and then won a bowl game and went 9-4, it might be enough, but we'll see what happens. I personally don't understand why he was hired necessarily in the first place, and I'm fine with it because Notre Dame's been beating them, but I do think Southern Cal is going to be a little bit better than folks think. So leading into the year, who do I think is going to win the national championship? So as has been the case, and I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know, the national championship goes through Clemson and Alabama, all right? And that's true. However, I think at some point, Georgia is going to have to figure out how to win it, and I think this is the year. I think this is the year that Georgia is able to win it. I think it's entirely possible that Georgia loses the SEC championship, they get into the playoff, and then they beat either Alabama or Clemson to get to where they need to be, all right? I do not think that Georgia could beat Alabama twice, but I think they have the ability to beat them 1 out of 2, all right? So this is the year, Georgia fans. You got it. Look, lots of talent has come into that program over the past, 4 to 5 years. And if they don't do it this year, I'll tell you, again, at some point, you've got to figure it out. And I think this is the year for Georgia. So anyway, that's all I got for this week, guys. Enjoy the games.